Sabrina the Animated Series, Episode 60. Sabrina says all proceeds go to the library. Sabrina does a car wash for a while. Why does no one question her super speed? It abandons logic just because she's a cartoon character, so the artist thinks her having super speed makes sense. But it's needlessly confusing when she's a witch. She also does a yard sale when, go figure, it's obvious that she could sell people magical artifacts. This would only not happen if she told her family she was gonna do the yard sale, so they hid all the magical stuff. Salem says he bought something off a pilgrim for a joke, and if a witch taps it 3 times, she'll lose her magic for a while. Somehow she even considers wearing it as an ankle bracelet after hearing that, when it's so obvious her life is full of bad luck. This makes me think she'll lose her magic as the premise of the plot. She could have zapped up a copy of it to wear as a bracelet instead. At least Jem eventually decides to donate to the library after boring trash. But it's out of character after she refused to donate before. Sabrina looks forward to giving the library money, so I wonder if she'll lose it all. Why is Pi wasting a ton of my time with very boring dialogue? Sabrina's friends look forward to futuristic transportation because of a magazine. I wonder how the episode's gonna go. It's so obvious that this is gonna get used again. What a waste of time. Then they admire a toy behind a window. Sabrina shows bad chemistry with Harvey by saying it's just a toy for no reason. Gee, I wonder if they won't be able to get it. What's the point of making the plot too predictable? It's too expensive. There's no way that the kids would waste time talking to the store owner for so long after they're told it's $200. They just immediately leave. What an agonizingly boring, blatant waste of time episode. If the writer doesn't want to write Sabrina's stories, he shouldn't have taken the job. Why did she buy the doll with the library money when she doesn't even like the franchises associated with, just because Jem wanted the doll? She could have cast a spell after she bought it to make sure she'd never get it, or better yet, cursed the doll. It's insultingly out of character that she bought something with charity money. She says it's extra money anyways. At least she tried. But her friends get mad and walk away from her. The writer hates Sabrina. Then the story wastes time again. Sabrina pulls a white curtain and then looks sad, and Quigley tells her he's proud of her for doing a wonderful thing for the whole town, because she still had enough money to give to the library after she spent some of it. Then she gets scared by a lightning storm, and an inexplicably talking toy with a creepy voice says it's Sabrina Go Boom Boom time. What ridiculous dialogue for a supposedly scary scene. They think they have to downplay this scary tone. How about not even try in the first place because this is supposed to be a comedy? Is she dreaming? This is her conscience brought to life. Why hasn't this happened a lot more often? She smartly relaxes because her conscience wouldn't hurt her. She's lectured and says she worked hard to earn the extra money. Why doesn't she instead get told that she could have created gold and sold it to earn money to replace what she spent right away? Then it wouldn't have mattered. After all, she must have used magic to create the gold locket because her family isn't rich, and if that was a family heirloom, you'd think it would have had magic in it. So they wouldn't have given it to her. She wakes up seeing that her house looks awful, and the toy tells her Quigley did this. She's told she's 40 years into the future. Why doesn't she instantly return to her old life just by pointing? I wouldn't put up with that. She can go see what it's like in the future anytime, and clearly she won't have any fun as she goes along with this guy trying to guilt trip her. I might as well just sum up everything good in the future with one sentence. It's good that it shows off futuristic technology. If it doesn't do it in an interesting, non-cliche way, then I'm not even gonna have that. It's all a boring waste of time. Sabrina reminds Pi about his ideas for transportation. He didn't make any of them come true because the library didn't have the money for updated reading material to help him out, when obviously he could have used the internet to find out more about transportation. Besides, he would have been able to go to college. Sabrina should obviously at least lie that she learned her lesson to instantly end the sequence. He's very gullible in that regard if he's doing this. I thought Jem would lie that she learned her lesson in the Christmas Carol as soon as she started crying, because that'd be smart. and show off her manipulative side. The story should have ended here, so the episode doesn't deserve to be described until the sequence is over, as it's just repetitive. Salem looked at Sabrina saying he didn't recognize her. He says this is his first job in years. How did he get hired? Why did Sabrina think he'd have gotten his human body back by now? Thanks to Sabrina, he shit in a sand trap in the Witches' Council's favorite golf course. Sabrina would not be responsible for that. She definitely would have just warped him to a bathroom. And somehow he says the real Sabrina's gone. Why was she told that if it turned out she became rich and relies on robots and no one can see her without an appointment? Salem wouldn't lie. You could stop watching at this point and skip to the end and miss nothing good because it's tedious from this point on. Sabrina got an appointment by telling her that she knows the two of them are half witches. Her old self would not talk like a stereotypical villain. She wouldn't say she sold over her powers as part of a corporate merger that was somehow classified. Supposedly she ended up like this because she learned that she could get away with cheating and frauding because she got away with the first thing. She's gotten away with plenty of evil things before that. Wouldn't this mean she was doomed to get to this point anyways, because she's abused magic plenty of times and gotten away with it? The story would only be salvageable if it was explained that all of this was a fake vision of the future to manipulate Sabrina, and the conscience doesn't think it's okay to outright brainwash her. Jem warps here because she got her powers. And somehow the old Sabrina holds her and hopes she'll like her. Jem says she hated her because of jealousy. There's no reason she would admit that. Sabrina calls Jem icky and asks her why she'd want to be like Jem. Guards get summoned to grab her, and Jem always knew who Sabrina was, so why didn't she just be honest with her in the first place? She wants to steal her magic. How would she not be satisfied with the magic she already has? How are there any limits to what she can do? It's such lazy writing. Why didn't Sabrina warp away from her much earlier? She touches her artifact 3 times to stop Jem. Wouldn't the magic still be in the artifact? Because that's the only way she'd ever have a chance of getting her magic back. Then the robot dogs pull Salem into the room after they somehow knocked over doors to let him get to Sabrina. Salem could have arrived earlier and the artifact wouldn't even be necessary. Salem saved her because she told him something only Sabrina would know. He says she's gotta jump, and she falls through the roof somehow into her bed where life is back to normal. She'd be dead. She pets him and he likes it. But I can't help but be creeped out as an adult because he used to be a human. He also says, "me likey," to make it worse. Sabrina decides to get the money back for the library, which forced her to listen to Jem for too long. Somehow it never occurs to her tiny little brain that she could just zap up money or gold to sell and give the money that she'd get from it to the library. This episode forces Sabrina to act out of character by buying something with charity money so that she could get lectured in a future where her friends all hate their jobs, just because she didn't give her library money. Even though they don't need the library because the internet exists and college exists. This would only make sense if the future was just made up. It's boring. It's pointless because what kid would ever need this lesson? Not one that listened to this. Especially since she bought something with extra money. And it never needed her to be a witch because the future could have been just a dream. And she never uses magic. Sabrina the Animated Series, Episode 61. Somehow the ants walk home, and Hilda says she can't believe they have to carry everything home, even though they could warp home. I assume they think they have to do this because Quigley told them to, but he wasn't watching. Zelda falls over, and Hilda makes her bags levitate. See, if they think they can get away with using magic on them, they really have no excuse for not warping home. People always assume that magic is a hallucination anyways. Hilda's an asshole making Zelda carry them all, and Zelda's an impossible doormat. Even though she feuds with Hilda a lot in this show. They want a car, and Hilda sits on the eggs. But again, the slapstick sucks because we don't see it. Quigley says he'll only let them have a car if they buy it. They freak out rather than realizing that they could just sell gold and get the money for it. Or sell an antique of theirs and get the money for it. Instead, they don't realize that, and their allowances are too cheap. I hate that these witches are reliant on a mortal for allowances that they aren't even related to. I assume they have a family car, and they're just asking for their own personal car. Is nobody gonna remind them that Hilda can't drive well? Guess she got better. Salem hangs up on Sabrina's phone call and turns on the radio. Someone says he's looking for someone who knows an answer. Salem says they finally asked a question he knows, and answers it eventually. How did he know the answer? The pancreas of a pig. He does know he'd have to hope Quigley picks up the chocolates, pretending to be him, right? Why does Salem lie that his name is Sabrina when it's obvious he has a male voice? There's no reason Quigley would refuse to pick up what he won. The phone call guy at least says, "You have a deep voice." To be fair, I know there's a realistic explanation for why he'd take his word for it that he's a girl. There's so much padding this episode. Quigley asks the ants why they won't get jobs. They laugh, and Zelda asks Quigley if he thinks they won't work. They used to have jobs. They were responsible for making the Trojan horse. And Hilda once smacked a ship with a bottle, and somehow everyone cheered when they'd all see the giant hole that somehow got created by it. They were in front of the hole. Why make the characters ridiculous comedy relief? It's not cathartic because it's usually Quigley that's mistreating Sabrina. Someone throws them out for being physically teens. Again, why is someone pushing them out? Why do people keep slamming the doors on them instantly? Obviously they look like adults. And this is exaggerated. They end up getting jobs after all, working for a guy who somehow talks the way he does. Somehow one of the rules is no reading, and that applies to reading the rules. Just like Robotnik. Sabrina gets carried by people for being the winner. Why is no one reacting to Salem talking for more than a few seconds? He clearly looks surprised. How does the guy who thinks he's hallucinating cheerfully start smiling after this? Why are they gonna make someone a star for supposedly guessing the right answer? Eventually the ants are told to wash things. Zelda says they can't do a spell here because if they're caught, it's off with their heads. And worse, they could lose their jobs. Her saying this would only make sense if she thought witches could survive that, which would only be possible if they had an Operation Phoenix. Why doesn't she just say, it's pretty likely that there's a camera recording this room? Why were they able to mistake a rat for a sponge? Why did the show not actually show Hilda using magic to clean things faster? I shouldn't have to explain, magic's the whole reason people watch the show. You'd think that her magic would have been caught on a security camera that's there to catch crime. And the person seeing it would have been able to rewind it as much as possible to see that he didn't imagine it. Zelda was crawling through a dark place with a light on her hat somehow, and she glares at Hilda for being treated well by the boss because she's petty. Eventually Quigley says there's also the costs of gas and other stuff. This tells them that they'd have to keep the jobs to keep the car. The whole episode would only happen if they figured that Quigley would get rid of or destroy their car if they bought it with money gotten from magic. And he would also do that if they bought it with stuff that they only have because of how long they've been alive. Hilda gets promoted even though Zelda did all the work again. Nothing that happened in their scene was memorable. It's just too boring to have no magic for a long period of time. It turns out all the 10,000 CDs were the same and they all sunk, somehow. When Salem brags that no one could take the camera away from him, Harvey steals it. At least he does give it back to Sabrina after he says they could go skateboard. Sabrina has to lie to Harvey that it is her camcorder because a cat winning a contest would be silly. So she has to bring the camera with her. This would only be written if she was gonna break it. Or if there's not enough stuff in the episode. Salem could have easily told her to magically make it unbreakable because he usually doesn't trust her anyways. Nothing interesting happens until Zelda says Hilda used to be her best friend. I never got that impression with them doing almost nothing but abusing magic on each other or bickering. But this is a flimsy excuse for why they're even working together. Hilda unnecessarily brags that she's making more money in front of her witch sister. She somehow doesn't care at Zelda incinerating her coins. I always liked that the ants got a job at a restaurant themed off a Renaissance fair because it takes advantage of how old they are. Hilda's left in charge, and arbitrarily, Sabrina videotapes her ants being catty to each other. I assumed that she would use this footage against them, but it's completely pointless. They don't even do anything about the tape. Zelda quits and pushes Hilda. Why did Sabrina let go of the camera? She somehow was fast enough to catch it before it hit the floor. Zelda turns it into a decoration to hang on the wall to watch Hilda do all the work alone. Why doesn't Hilda just create a person to do whatever she says instead of trying to do all the boring work alone? She acts bossy and rude. Why was the excess grill grease kept in a cup? Why is Hilda telling a kid to chew with his mouth closed? It's common sense to be nice to the customers. This is just cringe comedy forcing Hilda to act like a crazy person. If she was like this in the sitcom, she wouldn't have kept her job as a restaurant manager. A school bus full of kids run into this restaurant for no reason. I wish I had field trips like this. Hilda was the owner of a coffee shop in the sitcom, and she managed that perfectly fine. Sabrina screams and says she can't let people see her like that. Harvey would hear her say a spell. I wonder if the spell will somehow backfire. It does. The guy pulls the curtain and they see Salem behind him because she somehow forgot she was covering for Salem. And she said to make the winner look good. Somehow. Why would she have said a spell instead of just pointing while imagining a photo of herself? When her summoning stuff just by pointing always works. When the writing is good. And when it doesn't work, it's never implied to be because she didn't say a spell. Hilda slips and admits she was wrong and she needs Zelda. She helps her up and sweetly says, "Apology accepted, sis." Zelda eventually tells the audience to carry out a sing-along, which gets them to run out of here screaming. It was obvious their boss would want them to stay so he could make money off them. I know she might want them to leave so Hilda wouldn't have to deal with all these customers, but their boss could be back any second. Zelda says Hilda was being a good manager even though she wasn't. She and her sister both try to take the credit for something bad, and the boss demotes them to being the people wearing a horse costume for catching kids. Am I supposed to be happy because it's punishing them for being petty children with each other? I feel nothing with this. I have to assume they were punished by their boss because the kids from the field trip weren't still in the restaurant, and he assumed they were going to still be there. In this boring episode, it's never explained why the ants get boring jobs rather than zapping up gold lockets to sell, or selling their antiques, since they can zap up replacements for them, or simply creating the car in the first place. When they know they could use magic on Quigley if he ever drove away with their new car and hid it to punish them for using magic or the fact that they're witches to get it. Even TV Tropes points out at one point that they could blast Quigley. They only wanted the car to not need to walk home with the groceries every day, but if they think they can get away with levitating them, then they would have just warped home. And it's not explained that Zelda can't drive well, so it always makes Quigley look selfish for never simply letting them drive with his car. At least saying that only Zelda's allowed to drive it. I was looking forward to this episode because I loved the idea of Zelda having a job in the comic, but it's too boring to have them have normal jobs after all of this waiting for it, and it's too late to give them jobs because by this point I started thinking of them as just selling the valuables in their house for money. What's the point of the episode if they won't have jobs in the next episodes? Even the sitcom did that. The episode felt pointless the whole way through because it was entirely forgettable when magic was used, and it was almost never needed. And everything that happened was mundane, despite Sabrina having to take credit for her cat winning prizes. And it's unrealistic that she'd get tons of media attention and have to be in front of a crowd a few times just because Salem answered a question over the phone. It goes to show me how horrible this show is that the plots with no focus on magic are still better than the ones with magic, because they're that bad at trying to write actual Sabrina stories, so they're better off not even trying. as then they're just boring instead of enraging and preachy. Sabrina's plot was pointless, and the guy over the phone wouldn't be fooled by Salem saying that he has a frog in his throat to make him sound masculine. So I assume the lesson of the episode was not for Sabrina, but for these sisters, to tell us to get along with your sibling, especially in the very unlikely situation where you'll be working in the same place as her. Imagine, they could have avoided their entire subplot by getting jobs in different workplaces. What are the chances that they would have 2 open positions in one building at the same time? The flimsy excuse for this is that they think of each other as best friends. But that's an idiot ball because they're always feuding in the show. They should have had the common sense to realize that they wouldn't get along. So the moral of the story is, don't do what Hilda did or your sibling will get back at you. So it kind of was about magic being demonized, because I think the reason Hilda got promoted was because she used magic to clean a whole room. But they were both in charge of that room, so wouldn't the boss have been impressed with Zelda too? I'm pretty sure this plot would have happened even if she wasn't using magic. The fact that they're teenagers really drags down the episode, because if they were adults, we could have seen them get a job that reflected who they are, like in the sitcom. Instead they're stuck with getting jobs that any teenagers could get.